Robin, Kim, we're here today to talk about trends impacting the talent acquisition industry. Kim, in your perspective, let's talk about flexibility as a trend across the workforce.
So I think when you talk about the workforce today, they want flexibility. And so I think, they're not as interested in 5 days in the office, in a rigid schedule. They want flexibility in their work day. And so, what we try to emphasize to our clients is allow flexibility where you can. We have quickly learned that, it's not only a great recruitment tool, but it's a great retention tool. And, to give you an example of how we use flexibility in the way that we run MeeDerby is we are a 100% remote organization. We are also we're performance-based. And so while everybody on the team does really have core working hours, which I'll say, some people are at their desks 8:30, 9, usually until about 5. But people also know that they have the option that if they need to be away from their desk for 2 hours to do something with their family, their children's school, a doctor's appointment, we have a group MeeDerby text, and all we ask is that people send a text that says, I'm away from my desk, so that we know or expect not to hear from them right away. But I think, just looking across our landscape, our tenure ranges from, brand new, 3 months with our newest person to, I think Jill has been on the team for a little over 30 years. And so the tenure on our team, we have strong tenure, we have great collaboration, and so that's the way we view flexibility, and that's the way we talk about it with our clients, because I think it opens up your candidate pipeline tremendously.
I've always viewed daily flexibility as something that's important to me. And my logic with it is if I'm not at 100%, why am I sitting here in the first place? And I know from a management standpoint, that's probably incredibly difficult to manage to something like that. But if I'm sitting here and I know my productivity levels, I know when I'm on and when I'm off. And if I'm off, I would much rather go to the gym for 45 minutes and put in time later or on Saturday than sit here and look at TikTok for 30 minutes because I'm of no value to anybody at that point. But when your rhythms are off and you're not producing at 100%, like I said, why be there in the first place? So I've always appreciated the flexibility. Haley Marketing is a fully remote team too, and we operate pretty similarly as MeeDerby. I've always appreciated that because I feel like I can put out a higher output when I have that flexibility myself. Robin, what are you seeing as it relates to flexibility in the workplace?
Well, so I think that there's, a couple of things. Part of it is societal. Part of it is, post-COVID. Part of it is generational. But we have also been remote, but not the entire. MeeDerby's 35 years old, and we've been remote for 14 years. So when you have a remote organization, you have, certain things that are almost embedded in there, and flexibility, at least as we manage a remote company, flexibility has been part of our fabric. And so, as Kim said, that means that while people have core hours, they also have the flexibility to go pick their child up at the bus stop and go volunteer in any of the organizations that they're interested in. If we have to, what I consider to be, if we have to micromanage our employees to get the most out of them, because those things actually are not the same thing, right? I think that providing the flexibility, which also fits into this, how we're going to office, whether it's remote, whether it's hybrid, whether it's in office. But people today, across all generations, are looking for flexibility in their work and also how they work. And so from a recruiting and retention perspective, I'm super passionate about this because I think that it is really part of MeeDerby's success. We've had, I call it employees for life. If you want employees for life, then you have to support them across their lifespan from and for a long period of time. So Jill is a perfect example. When she first started at MeeDerby, she had little children, and today those are grown children, and she's, spending time with aging parents and sort of managing her life in different ways. So this ongoing discussion, not only about flexibility, which I think is different than how we're officing, but the meeting people where they are, because there are some people who actually want to be in an office 5 days a week. There's other people who won't go in an office to say, period, end of story. They're only going to consider a remote, and other people who really like this hybrid environment. And it's such an individualized experience for the employee, but for management, if they're flexible on how they will support their employees based on how they want to work, then I think in the long run, everybody wins. You've got much higher productivity from your employees. You've got much happier people. You've got much longer retention. And it is absolutely possible, and Haley is doing it, and MeeDerby is doing it, and so many other companies are doing it, to have a fully remote workforce that is very engaged, that is very high performing, that is excited to be living their lives and working in the way that their company is supporting them. And then we find other ways of connectivity. We, at MeeDerby, we're on 2 staff meetings a week. We get together, 5 of us are in the DC metro area, because that's where we started. Mm-hmm. So tomorrow I'm going to see Kim, I'm going to see Sue, I'm going to see Eliza. They're all going to be coming to my home office. We've got a work lunch scheduled. So there are 5 of us, for example, going to Executive Forum next week. We find lots of places to connect. We have an annual retreat, but we also are supporting people in their lives.
So what I love that you're saying there is, one, we have the desire to be flexible and the understanding of flexibility, but there's also the desire to be incredibly intentional, right? So what I've always struggled with in being remote, and kind of to peel back the curtain here, it's very tough to form a relationship with somebody unless you're intentional in doing that. It's easy when you're in an office to bump into Matt at the water cooler and say, hey, how about, the Bills? How about that game on Sunday? As a byproduct of, listen, we're sort of in the same confined space, and I have to ask you how your weekend was. Now, being remote, being in a completely remote world, you need to be incredibly intentional in saying, hey, man, how was your weekend? How's things going? How is the family? And Robin, what I love that you're doing at MeeDerby is you're creating this environment where you're bringing people together, you're being intentional in that, but you also have, Kim, as you mentioned, the team group chat where people are texting and they're talking throughout the day, right? You're either using Slack or email or texting, and you're having those open lines of communication. Robin,
I'll give you an example, Brad. Every Monday morning, we have a 9:30 call, and it really evolved. It started during COVID because we used to only have 1 meeting a week. We went to 3, now we're at 2. Yep. And that Monday morning we start actually both of our meetings now with a fun question. And by the way, the person who runs the meeting, and that rotates through the organization, figures out what that question is. And lots of times they are windows into that person's weekend, windows into that person's family, windows into that. I mean, we talk about what we're streaming, and there was a question one Monday. What posters were on your wall when you were growing up? Ooh. Right? We've learned so much about each other that if we were in an office, I don't even think we would know about. Yeah. And then we get kids and animals popping into the video screen. So I honestly think we are such a close team, and it really shows in relationships. It also really shows in how collaborative we are. I would say 80 to 90% of the searches MeeDerby does are collaborative search. So, Kim and I are partnering on a search, et cetera. So the incredible relationships and being intentional is so important, but also hiring the right people and then supporting them in the way that fosters that kind of collaboration and connectivity. There's a lot of celebrating at MeeDerby, Brad. Good. We've already celebrated this morning. We celebrate every placement, every anniversary, every birthday, every monumental thing. And people come and share those things so we can all celebrate them together.
That's fantastic. And Robin, one other thing that you were leading to that's going to kind of kick us into our next trend is the desire and really the need for leadership in 2024 to be empathetic, to know that your team, everybody is at different stages of their lives. Everybody has a different thing going on. Everybody has some sort of, I don't want to say baggage, but I'm going to say baggage that they carry. Everybody is shouldering some sort of weight that you don't really know about. The trend here that y'all are seeing and that you wanted to share today, and Kim, I'll pass it to you here, is that leadership in 2024 needs to be empathetic and adapt to change. Kim, talk to us about that.
Well, and empathetic leadership is, I think, a core value for both of us because, as Robin said, you have to support people in their lives. And, I think all of us at MeeDerby are prime examples of that. And you just have to listen and figure out how to lead through that. Several years ago, I was in a situation where I was the person, caring for aging parents. And so my schedule flip-flopped every single day, depending on what was going on with them. But Robin always knew where I was, and my team always knew where I was. They knew when I could be on, when I couldn't, when I would be away from my desk. But I think you have to be willing to listen to your team and to understand what goes on in their household outside of work. Because at the end of the day, it's going to affect their performance at work. And if they feel like they have a comfortable space that they can talk, they can share, or if they need to check out, they can check out with no repercussions. And so I just think, being there for the people in your organization is critically important these days, and being able to take those soft cues as to when somebody's having a bad day and allow them the opportunity to have a bad day.
Yeah, so I know we're talking internal teams, but how do, I guess, either of you propose we do that when we're placing somebody in a contract or we're putting somebody on an assignment if they need that time? How do we work with those employees to make sure that we're doing right by them as well? What do you propose there?
I'm a big fan of transparency with both your clients and your candidates. And I think the more transparent you are about whatever situation is going on, the better outcome it's going to be. It's when, I feel like it's when you don't talk about it, or you try to sweep it under the carpet, so to speak, or people just hide it and feel like they can't talk about it. I think the more that it's talked about and the more openness there is, and sometimes that means we have to go to our clients with difficult situations. Sometimes we have to go to our candidates with difficult situations. But I think, again, just as you would your internal employees, giving them a safe space to talk about it with no repercussions is really important. And from a client perspective also, in some cases, they need to know that you're going to stand up for them in front of the client, that you back them, and that you're going to help open that conversation.
Well, and what's coming through for me is relationships, and this actually kind of takes us into the next topic, which is technology, and that is maintain. As technology is so very important in staffing, the relationship becomes all the more important. Because at MeeDerby, and we're, again, a small company, but all of our clients are staffing companies. So, and we are very tuned into trends and make a real push internally to automate as much as we can. So we do a lot of demos. We learn as much as we possibly can. We are staying open-minded and relevant and trying to figure out what we can automate and what we need to maintain. And what we know that we have to maintain are these relationships, and then automate as much of the road activity as we possibly can. So it's an interesting
just jump in real quick
dynamic
with the automation. Sorry, I just didn't want to forget to bring it up, but we have been automating recently, and we had just a great, response yesterday to an automated email from a candidate that started a new job that said, wow, thank you so much for checking in. My first day has been great. My onboarding has been great. And thank you so much for this opportunity. But that was a result of an automated email that we sent out, prior to the person's first day. So it was, automation, but with a personal touch.
Yeah.
And allowed them to respond, in the time that they could.
Go
ahead, Robin, please.
I'm just reminded, too, of the impact that we make on people's lives. So helping people find a job is such a core, important thing for all. We know how important it is to be engaged at work, compensated effectively at work, that our voices are heard, that we're able to have opportunities to elevate in our careers, that we are, and we are doing that for everybody that we work with. And then on the other side, on the client side, we are tremendously impacting their organizations by introducing them to talent that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to. And so when you think about the core value of helping people find work that is going to put food on their families' tables and also, feed such an important component of our lives, this relationship piece, right? But that goes back to empathy. And I think the empathetic leadership has, again, something to do with generational shifts, the need for the post-COVID era that we find ourselves living in, and the need for leadership to be so attuned to their internal teams' opportunities and struggles. And, I do think that there's so much happening today, and not only revenue shifts and staffing, some of the varieties of things that are happening inside of the staffing industry, but just as we look at our employees. And you don't have to go far to read in newspapers and magazines and to see just in social media how much change is happening in the world.
Right.
And empathetic leadership and connected leadership really kind of fits into, again, recruiting and retention.
Yeah, and relationships in my mind are what make the industry so great, right? And also what makes the top staffing firms stand out from the ones who might not be around in a year or two, right? When we try to get that human layer out of it, that's where I feel like we get away from ourselves. If we operate as a career coach, as a career mentor, as a career agent, we had the staffing shark on a little while ago, and he's a huge proponent on being a career agent. So now I use that buzzword quite a bit. But when we fight for our candidates and they know that we would go to war for them, that's the relationship with somebody who will never leave us. Now, if this is transactional and somebody applies to a job and 100 people apply and maybe we talk to one of them and they don't know if we like them or not because there's 99 people who are now in a black hole of, hey, I submitted a resume, but I don't know what's going on. Those people are going to go somewhere else. There's no relationship there. But again, if you're a career coach, you're a career agent, you're working with somebody and you're going to war for them, they will absolutely stick with you.
And again, I think we have to be really careful about technology because we do want to automate as much as possible, but we need to maintain that core, these core tenets, and the relationship piece is the core tenet.
But I think taking it back to technology, we need to recognize that in some cases, today's technology is what is allowing us to do a lot of things that we're doing, whether it's working remotely, whether it's being on camera like this, being able to interact with your teams on camera, just some of the new technology across the industry, some of the platforms that are allowing people to apply for a job, start to finish on a platform, apply for a variety of shifts and not be relegated to just a 40-hour shift, the same hours. So I think, also recognizing that technology has really fueled where we are today. And, as I said to Robin yesterday, I think we all just have to be willing to embrace it, learn what we can, not panic. Again, this morning was a prime example for me because 20 minutes before this call, because I have a brand new desk setup, nothing worked. My camera didn't work. My audio didn't work.
Of course.
And so fortunately, I have a local IT person. So I called him and he could hear the panic in my voice. And he said, Kim, remember the work now we set up yesterday? So he logged in. He very calmly walked me through everything.
Perfect.
And at about 5:11, I was ready to get on. But I think it was a great exercise in don't panic.
Yeah.
Embrace. And, as much technology or as little. And we have a couple people on our team that Some use more than others, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, Kim, we're glad you're here. Glad you figured it all out. I'm glad your IT team was able to help you figure it out. We had Trisha Tampkin on the show a little while ago, and she walked us through a blueprint of how can AI support me in insert task here. And I've sort of embraced that for AI specifically, but also technology, as we're alluding to. When we are just sort of wasting time on AI or wasting time with technology, we are plain and simple wasting time. But if we have a true need or a true desire, or we're feeling pain because of something, and we can match that with a solution, well, then the technology works. The last thing we want to do is open up ChatGPT and just waste an hour of our workday, right? We had just talked about being productive and being efficient. If that's the case, go to the gym, come back to work an hour later, right? Because we don't need to be doing that. But how can that technology, how can AI help me in insert task here? I want to get to another trend here. So we had talked about how we need to be flexible. We've talked about technology. We've talked about how to be empathetic. I want to talk to both of you about women in leadership, DE&I, and ageism, and how that continues to be important in the workplace. Kim, we started with you twice. Robin, we'll start this one with you. Go for it.
Well, there are very few topics that are closer to my heart and to my passion than issues of women in leadership, DE&I, ageism, and you don't have to go far to look and see the statistics in the staffing industry where, we, as people start in the industry as recruiters and eventually salespeople, and eventually they get up to branch managers, the numbers of men and women are pretty equal. Until you start getting into positions above branch manager. And there's several dynamics at play there, but women leave the industry is one of them. And therefore, there aren't as many women to promote into more senior positions. And we need to do a far better job of retaining women and, frankly, attracting people of color into our industry intentionally. Because the numbers at the very highest levels are dismal. We have very few women in the C-suite, and we have almost no women of color in the C-suite in the staffing industry. Now, both ASA and SIA have done really good jobs of elevating these really important issues. And ASA, I'll give you an example. Their first foray into this was by establishing an organization or an interest group called the Women in Leadership Interest Group. Right. And Kim and I, and now our colleague Sue, have been very involved from a leadership perspective in that organization. MeeDerby is a sponsor of the Women in Leadership Interest Group, and it has taken on a life of its own, Brad. We've got our own conference that there's one virtual in May, Thrive virtual, and there is Thrive Live that is part of Staffing World. And we are bringing such important speakers and webinars and podcasts and people together to learn, to become aware. Men are welcome. Men are in our rooms and participating in these events. But an example is there is a scholarship program within the Women in Leadership Interest Group that last year we had, I think, 150 people who applied. There were 8 scholarships given. And they are given to women who have had less than 8 years of
staffing industry experience.
And these are scholarships that are bringing people to conference. They come to Thrive, they come to Staffing World, they have an all expense paid experience. And so we are elevating individuals in their careers. And then ASA started an IDEA group. And IDEA is their inclusion, diversity, equity, and it is also an interest group that is meeting regularly and bringing these issues to light. And there's actually an organization called Women of Color in Staffing that is led by an independent group. Delibra Wesley is the founder of that group. And MeeDerby is also a sponsor, and others. ClearEdge, for example, is another sponsor of bringing these issues to light. Therefore, we will get more, the goal, of course, is to elevate both attract and elevate into the industry so that there's more equal representation. You don't have to go far. Last week was Equal Pay Day, and while women have made strides, women are still only making 84 cents to the dollar that men make. And, so clearly there is a lot of work to be done. And so ASA and SIA is at Executive Forum next week. They've got some very specific women in leadership tracks or programming. I know that I'm going to be doing some facilitated roundtables on women in leadership. So there's a lot to accomplish. Last week, Richard Walquist from ASA put a piece out on ageism, and we did some social sharing on that. That has an area of discrimination that doesn't get much light, certainly not in the staffing industry. I will tell you that it is the number one discrimination thing that we see at MeeDerby. And it happens all the time. We want somebody that only has 3 years experience, 3 to 5 years experience. Well, right then you are discriminating against age, because somebody with 3 to 5 years of experience is not somebody that's had 20 to 25 or 30 years of experience. So the more we talk about these things, the more we bring these issues to light, the more I think it'll benefit all of us, everyone.
Robin,
and we have more generations in the workforce now than ever, and it's really interesting. Right. And I think some of the shifts that we've talked about today are generational in nature.
Robin, I want to give you the opportunity here to take a minute. If anybody listening wants to learn more about Thrive or the Idea Group, as you alluded to, or any of these great focus groups and these groups that you're a part of and directly a sponsor of, how can they learn more about them?
Well, I mean, you can reach out to either Kim or I. I mean, we can direct people in the right direction. And so maybe afterwards, Brad, you can provide our contact information. Sure. I mean, ASA and SIA are two of the most important resources for staffing professionals and at every level, because of the information, because of the kind of education and training. Mm-hmm. It is certainly been the most impactful thing in my career to be involved in these two organizations. But, start by reaching out to us and we'll send people in the right direction.
Yeah. And what I love there, and Kim, I want to give you a second here too, to expand on this trend as well. But what I love is there's a scholarship provided too, right? And I know being an ASA member is costly. And if you're listening right now thinking, well, I'm a branch manager, I'm a recruiter at this organization, I'm not sure my boss is going to pay for this. To send me all the way, I think Exec Forum's in Vegas this year, right? Yeah. To send me to Vegas, what, we're talking $5,000? They're not going to cover that. Even if they care about me, they're empathetic, they understand everything we've just talked about, that's still a big ticket item. So the opportunity of scholarships, of opportunities to make this a little bit more affordable for you, I love that. Love everything about that.
Okay. So the scholarships, the ASA scholarship, the Women in Leadership Scholarship, is open now, and it ends sometime in May. So going on the ASA website to find that, you can find it under the Women in Leadership Interest Group. But there is time still to get those scholarship applications in. Okay. And the conference this year is in Nashville in October. And again, it's all expenses paid. Thrive, Staffing World, going to provide the flights, going to provide the hotels, even giving a stipend for food, so that we can, again, and I believe last year, 8 people. And I think the year before, 8 people. And I think 8 is a number. And ASA, by the way, they have a foundation now that is raising money for scholarships and other things. But the first thing is around scholarships, again, to rise women up and give them opportunities to learn and to connect, and to also, create community. The community that we started talking about, relationships, the community that has been created in these, in the Women in Leadership and Idea Group, but also in these scholarship cohorts, is phenomenal.
Kim, any thoughts that you want to share on top of what Robin has shared on this trend in the workplace?
Well, I'll just add on to, this scholarship fund. What we have seen with each group of 8 is they have also become each other's peer group in the industry. So these are women that have come together from, many different companies, walks of life, and have become each other's internal peer group. One of the other great programs that we have participated in is the mentor-mentee relationship, which, again, I've signed up every single session to be a mentor, to, somebody in the industry that needs to learn something, that needs that extra level of support, and also just cannot stress how important that program is as well.
That's an ASA program, Brad.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So.
Let's change topics, right? And I know I said I'd keep you to about a half hour. I think we're gonna run a little bit long here, but maybe we can get you for one more trend, and then Rob and Kim might have to bring you on for a part 2 here, because there's a lot of really good conversation still left to be had here. But I want to talk about one that I keep hearing about, and that is that, well, there's actually a few things here, but in 2024, and this is the trend we're seeing, no recession, it's an election year, there's continued unemployment, and the baby boomers are retiring. I don't want to tell you the sky is falling, but there are 4 things there that kind of sound like the sky is falling. When we think about that trend in the workplace, what's it mean to you?
Well, I'll jump in just from the, baby boomers retiring. Couple things. One, for us, that's actually where we saw a huge area of growth from the standpoint of some private owners doing some succession planning, some people that maybe didn't step out during the pandemic, looking to transition some of their senior leadership roles. Mm-hmm. But interestingly enough, I think, with the baby boomers leaving, had a couple conversations over the last couple of days with people that are returning them to work in flexible hours, consulting arrangements, interim. They might be, they're taking their expertise and applying it 20 hours a week or 15 hours a week. So, have definitely seen a huge trend in that. Election years are always challenging years, and I think this year will be no different.
Yeah, I can tell you on the baby boomer side of things, both my parents retired for about a week and a half. and now I have a babysitter 3 days a week, which is fantastic. But they lasted about a week and a half before they realized this is not what we want to be doing. So I hear that firsthand, and I saw that firsthand. Election years are tough, right? And I've said this on the show before. I had a call with a client who is in oil and gas in Texas, and they said, Brad, basically, we need to just kind of ride this out until 2025. And I know that's not the best business strategy, but we don't know what's going to happen here. And if we do anything aggressive or we try to change anything, we could shake a lot of things up, and we don't want to do that. And that's scary, and it's a scary realization, but it's a byproduct of the industry we're in, the environment that we're in, and just the election year that we're in. And I think what's also important to note there, though, is we can kind of make our own luck in an election year. Rob and Kim, we were talking ahead of the call on how successful MeeDerby has been this year, and you're sort of choosing to just not participate in the election year, right?
Well, the reality is 2021 and 2022 were record years across the industry and almost across every vertical in the staffing industry. And then 2023 happened, and is it the post-COVID hangover? Is it certainly, depending on the vertical of staffing, healthcare had, natural changes, but there have been so much. I would say almost every vertical of staffing has been impacted by the economy. But we're in 2024 now, and turned out there wasn't really a recession. Stabilization is expected by Q3, Q4. I think a lot of people won't rock the boat because of it is an election year. But we are also seeing demand pick up, and we're seeing a real change in staffing organizations needing to hire sales and sales leadership. Over the last 5 years, I think sales really took a back seat to recruiting. The demand was so high, everybody was talking about talent acquisition. We need. We have so many more positions than we can fill. And then 2023 happened, and in 2023 that shifted. So, we did have a record year in 2023. We are having a fabulous first quarter 2024 because sales being a high demand area, because executive hiring continuing to be a high demand area, and in a period of change, which I think we really are. Many staffing companies have had layoffs over the last year. I mean, there's just a lot of shifting landscape, the demand for elevating internal teams continues to be a high demand there. So, we're cautiously optimistic for both MeeDerby's business as we have experienced nice growth and demand every year for the last 5 years, but also across the industry. I think some of that real fluctuation that happened last year evens out. Now we're going to learn more next week when Variation tells us exactly what we're going to be experiencing in 2024. But again, cautiously optimistic. Every staffing company in 2023, actually most, had a better year than they did in 2019. It's just these last 4 years have been so weird. Nobody could, we didn't know COVID was going to happen, and we've been able to ride these shifting tides, and I think that staffing continues to have a very bright outlook.
Yeah, and going back to 2019 and using that sort of time period, that's what I've been doing on a lot of calls and consulting calls that I've been a part of, because there is this sort of roller coaster that's going on, or just uncertainty that's going on. So say, well, listen, where were you 5 years ago? Are we forward? Let's ignore sort of the COVID era. What's going on now, and where are you? That's a lot of the conversation I've been having. Robin, Kim, before we get to that rapid fire round that I am so passionate about, y'all know the trends you wanted to talk about today. Are there any that you're incredibly passionate about that I didn't ask you that you want to speak on before we let you go?
I think we covered it.
Kim, anything?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Then let's get to the rapid fire round. What we'll do here, because there are two of you, we'll go through the 3 questions. We'll do one. I'll go Robin, Kim, and then we'll go right back through. Are you ready?
We are ready.
All right. Robin, one book that has fundamentally changed your life.
Okay, so one book, Together We Rise. This book I was part of writing. I am a co-author. There are 14 other women executives in the staffing industry who came together in the pandemic to write this very personal book. And the proceeds from this book have gone on to fund ASA scholarships.
Got it.
And have really we've sold 5,000 copies. I just found that out this week. And stay tuned. Maybe there's another one in the future, but this book has changed my life.
Excellent. Very nice. And thank you for sharing that. Kim, one book that has fundamentally changed your life.
I had to think about this, but it didn't take me long. There was a whole series by Mitch Albom, Tuesdays with Maury. Just because it really struck me. I said I was fortunate enough to care for aging parents, but I think his series and his books are just a great reminder to live in the here and now and be present with the people in your life.
Okay, and that just emphasizes Kim's empathetic leadership style. Yeah. Like, thanks for sharing that, Kim. I didn't know that, but
I have not read that one. I have read The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. I have not read Tuesdays with Maury, though. So I will definitely check that out. And like I said ahead of the show, friends, if you're listening to this, you know that every time we have a guest on, we ask about, one book that has fundamentally changed their life. One, I do think that paints a clear picture into who they are. It paints a clear picture into their passions and what has fueled them and guided them. But if we could peel back the curtain here, it's really just funneling books that I can read, and it's building my book library. So I appreciate you both sharing that as well. Second question, you have one 30-minute conversation with anybody, living or dead. Who are you going to sit down with? Robin, we'll start with you.
No, I'm going to let Kim start.
Kim, go for it.
All right, so I'll start. This one is near and dear to our heart. So I think you saw a lot of posts from us last week. Somebody who was just a groundbreaker in the industry for us, Loretta Penn. She was a female Black leader in the staffing industry. She helped us found the Women in Leadership Council. She was a mentor to me. I worked with her at Spherion. We continued our relationship. As I started my career with MeeDerby, Robin and I got to last see her in 2022. Every meeting you ever had with Loretta, she always made you feel like $1 million. She made time for you no matter what. And so Loretta's gift was always the gift of time. And so you knew that you meant something to Loretta because she gave you the gift of time.
Love that answer. Robin, how about you?
All right. Well, I'm changing my initial thought, and it would be my mom, Brad. It's going to be my mom.
Yeah.
She was not unlike Loretta, a woman who not only broke she broke lots of glass. She at the end of her career with the federal government, she did glass ceiling reviews on Fortune 100 companies. She went on to, little known fact, work for me for 10 years at MeeDerby. Anybody who knew her, she went under the name Irene Nichols because that was her maiden name, and I thought that would be, nobody needed to know that my mom was working for me.
Yeah.
And she wrote her own eulogy that was titled How She Broke the Glass Ceiling. So my mom was an extraordinary person and a professional. She was a civil rights advocate, an activist. She was a lot of things. And so that's who I'm spending my 30 minutes with.
It's a fantastic, fantastic answer. And our last one here. You have one piece of advice that you could give to somebody just starting in the staffing and recruiting industry. What are you going to tell them? I'll let whoever wants to start there.
Kim.
I'll start. I think my three are, as you're starting in a new career, listen, absorb, and be flexible.
Love it. Love it. Robin, how about you?
Go to work for a company that has lots of great professional development and are members in good standing with ASA and SIA, and allow you to get involved. It is that opportunity that, because they both have so many, written, every day both of those organizations have a daily news feed. They have got webinars, they have got podcasts, they have got conferences. There is no better way to learn about the industry than getting involved with these two organizations.
They are Robin Mee, the CEO and founder of MeeDerby, and Kim Whiteley, the president of MeeDerby. Robin, Kim, can't thank you enough for coming on Take the Stage and spending some time with us this afternoon. Before I let you go, anything from me?
Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Haley.